He was a Navy SEAL forged in combat, yet dismissed by his own family as nothing more than a glorified kennelmaster. His only inheritance, a dented brass whistle. They sneered. They mocked. But what they saw as a worthless trinket, his grandfather knew, was a key. A key to a secret, a sanctuary, and a destiny that would force this SEAL and his K-9 partner to fight a war far from any battlefield. A brisk autumn wind swept off the harbor, channeling itself through the canyons of Boston's financial district. The air was sharp and clean, smelling of salt and old brick. Inside the top-floor law offices of Sterling, Blackwood, and Dunn, however, the atmosphere was stale and suffocating, thick with the scent of aged mahogany, beeswax, and the palpable tension of inherited wealth. Jake Callahan sat perfectly still in a wingback leather chair, his discomfort hidden behind a wall of hard-earned discipline. He was a man made of tougher stuff than this room, his athletic frame built for function, not for fashion. His suit, a simple, dark charcoal, looked more like a uniform than a civilian garment. His eyes, sharp and clear, missed nothing, cataloging the exits, the occupants, and the subtle currents of power. At his feet, equally still, lay Valor. Valor was a magnificent sable German shepherd, his coat a rich blend of dark brown and black. He was not a pet. He was a K-9 operator, a partner, and currently a silent rebuke to the gilded world Jake inhabited. His presence in this lavish room was an anomaly that made the rest of the family visibly uneasy. The rest of the family. Jake scanned them with a practiced, neutral gaze. His eyes slid over his Aunt Eleanor, a woman who seemed held together by her diamond tennis bracelet and a perpetual air of disapproval. She dabbed at perfectly dry eyes with a linen handkerchief. Beside her sat her son, Harrison Vance. Harrison, Jake's cousin, was the antithesis of Jake in every way. He was soft where Jake was hard, his bespoke suit draped over a body accustomed to boardrooms and Michelin star restaurants. His smile was charming, but his eyes were predatory. Other cousins, Kyle and Chloe, shifted in their chairs, their expressions alternating between feigned grief and poorly concealed boredom. At the head of the massive cherrywood table sat Arthur Sterling. Mr. Sterling was a man who seemed as old and enduring as the city's cobblestones, his face a roadmap of fine lines, his voice like the slow turning of a vault door. He had been Richard Callahan's lawyer, confidant, and executor for half a century. "We now come to the primary bequests of the Callahan estate," Sterling announced, his voice cutting through the quiet rustle of expensive fabrics. The room held its breath. Jake felt Valor shift slightly at his feet, a silent question. Jake rested a hand on the dog's powerful neck, giving a slow, calming stroke. He was here out of duty, nothing more. His grandfather, Richard, had been a giant, a brilliant, distant man who had built a financial empire and lost a family in the process. Jake had made his peace with his grandfather's world long ago by leaving it for the discipline, sacrifice, and brotherhood of the SEAL teams. "To my sister, Eleanor Vance, Sterling read, I leave the property on Martha's Vineyard and the associated trust as specified." Eleanor offered a delicate, well-rehearsed sniffle. "To my various nieces and nephews, Kyle, Chloe, and others, I bequeath the sums held in their respective educational trusts, now released to them in full." Polite murmurs rippled through the room. This was expected. "And now," Sterling paused, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses, "the remainder of the estate, including all shares of Callahan Financial, the properties held in the corporate portfolio, and all controlling interests." Harrison Vance sat up straighter, his facade of mourning slipping away to reveal a keen, hungry anticipation. "I bequeath in its entirety to my grandson, Harrison Vance." The exhale in the room was collective. Eleanor reached over to squeeze Harrison's arm, her face a mask of triumphant relief. Harrison himself simply nodded as if accepting the inevitable. "Grandfather was a wise man," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Indeed," Sterling said, his expression unreadable. "This concludes the primary dispersal." Kyle and Chloe were already whispering, likely making dinner reservations at the Union Oyster House. Jake prepared to stand. His duty was done. He had paid his respects. Now he and Valor could return to a world that made sense. "One final item," Arthur Sterling said, holding up a hand. The room quieted again, annoyed by the delay. Sterling reached into a drawer and retrieved a small, leather-bound box. "There is one personal bequest. To my grandson, Jake Callahan." All eyes swiveled to Jake. He felt the weight of their collective gaze, a mixture of pity and contempt. What scraps had Richard left for the family's black sheep? Sterling continued reading from the will. "To Jake, who never asked me for a dime, I leave the only thing of mine he ever seemed to admire, my old brass whistle." Sterling opened the box. Inside, nestled on worn velvet, was a small, dented object. It was an old dog whistle, simple brass, tarnished with age and use. A sharp snort escaped from Kyle. Chloe covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking in a silent laugh. Harrison Vance leaned back, a wide, magnanimous smile spreading across his face. "How fitting," he boomed, his voice dripping with condescension. "A dog whistle for the family's professional dog walker." Aunt Eleanor touched her diamonds. "Harrison, please. Your grandfather, he always had an odd sense of humor. It makes sense, Jake. You never did care for business. You were always outside playing in the mud with the animals." The insult, wrapped in a thin veil of propriety, hung in the air. Jake felt his jaw tighten imperceptibly. He felt the atmosphere in the room shift from tension to open mockery. He rose from his chair, his movements economical and precise. Valor rose with him in a single, fluid motion, standing at his left heel. Jake walked to the desk. He looked at the whistle, then at Arthur Sterling. He ignored everyone else. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling." He picked up the whistle. It was heavy in his hand, the metal cool against his skin. As he turned, Valor, sensing the focused hostility aimed at his partner, broke his perfect silence. A growl so low it was a vibration in the floorboards rumbled in his deep chest. His eyes, intelligent and amber, fixed directly on Harrison Vance. Harrison's smile faltered. The easy arrogance vanished, replaced by a flicker of primal fear. He was a man who controlled markets, not apex predators. Jake placed his hand on Valor's neck. "Easy, boy." The growl ceased instantly, but the stare remained. Jake nodded once to the room. "And Eleanor." "Harrison." He moved toward the door, Valor pacing him perfectly. "Don't spend it all in one place, cousin," Harrison called after him, his bravado returning now that the dog was moving away. Jake didn't look back. He was halfway across the marble foyer when the lawyer's voice echoed behind him. "Mr. Callahan." "Jake, wait." Jake stopped and turned. Arthur Sterling stood in the doorway of the conference room, the rest of the family already disappearing into the elevator, their laughter echoing down the hall. "May I have a word alone?" Sterling asked. Jake nodded. He gave Valor the silent command to watch, and the shepherd settled near the main door, alert and observant. Jake walked back. The heavy door clicked shut, muffling the sounds of the Boston street. The vast room felt empty now. "That was unpleasant," Sterling said. It wasn't an apology, just a statement of fact. "It's done," Jake replied, his voice flat. "No," the old lawyer said, and his demeanor shifted. The dry, formal executive was gone, replaced by a man with a sudden, sharp intensity. "It isn't." He looked at the tarnished whistle in Jake's hand. "Richard trusted you, Jake. He trusted you implicitly, more than any of them. He had a strange way of showing it." Sterling stepped closer. "Your family, they see commodities. They understand profit and loss. They don't understand value. Richard knew that. He spent the last 2 decades of his life building something different. Something that wasn't for them." Jake's gaze sharpened. Sterling lowered his voice. "He told me to tell you something when this was over. He said, tell Jake only he will know its true worth. It's not a memento. It's not a memory. He was very specific about the word, Jake." The lawyer leaned in. He said, "It's a key." "A key?" The word hung in the quiet room. Jake looked down at the old piece of brass. A new understanding was dawning. This wasn't a joke. It was a message. "I don't understand," Jake said. "You will," Sterling replied. Richard was very clear on the instructions. "Meet me at 0600 tomorrow morning. My private office, not here. Come alone." The lawyer then nodded toward the door where Valor waited. "And bring your partner. It's time you see what your grandfather truly left you." The pre-dawn light was a weak, watery gray when Jake and Valor met Arthur Sterling. The lawyer wasn't in his corporate sedan. He was waiting by a rugged, dark gray SUV that looked like it belonged in the mountains of New Hampshire, not parked on a Beacon Hill side street. The wind from the day before had settled, leaving a heavy mist that clung to the ground. "No driver today," Arthur said, his voice quiet in the empty street. "Just us." Jake nodded, giving Valor the command to load up. The shepherd leapt into the spacious back, settling instantly. Jake took the front passenger seat. The ride was silent as they navigated the sleeping city, crossing the Tobin Bridge and heading north, leaving Boston's skyline to dissolve in the fog behind them. For 3 hours, they drove. The landscape changed dramatically, shifting from urban sprawl to quaint New England towns, and finally to the dense, rocky forests of the Maine coast. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and pine. Arthur handled the vehicle with a quiet competence, navigating winding roads that grew progressively narrower and more treacherous. The mist was so thick here it was almost rain, clinging to the giant granite boulders and moss-covered branches that crowded the roadside. Eventually, Arthur turned onto a road that was little more than a dirt track, marked only by a faded private property sign riddled with rust. The track climbed sharply, the SUV's tires grabbing at the wet gravel. Valor, who had been dozing, lifted his head, his ears swiveling. "He senses it," Arthur noted. "Senses what?" Jake asked, his first words in an hour. "The ocean? We're close." The track ended abruptly at a sheer wall of granite, a dead end overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, which churned gray and angry hundreds of feet below. The only sign of human life was a small, unmarked utility box. "End of the line, it seems," Jake observed, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "No path, no gate." Arthur simply got out of the car. He walked to the utility box and placed his hand on a biometric scanner that was almost invisible against the metal. There was a low hum, and a section of the rock face, a piece of granite so large it seemed impossible, retracted smoothly into the cliff, revealing the dark, square mouth of a tunnel. "After you," Arthur said. Jake and Valor exited the vehicle. The air was cold, blasted with salt spray. Valor stayed close to Jake's heel, his entire body alert. They stepped into the tunnel, and the massive stone door slid shut behind them, sealing them in darkness. A moment later, soft recessed lights flickered on, illuminating a passage wide enough to drive the SUV through. Arthur did just that, parking it in a designated bay before joining them. They walked for several minutes down the smooth concrete passage. The air grew warmer, scrubbed clean, and sterile. The tunnel opened into a vast subterranean lobby. It was nothing like the opulent law office. This was sleek, modern, and functional. All brushed steel, glass, and living walls of green foliage fed by unseen grow lights. In the center, a simple, elegant inscription was carved into the stone: the Aegis Project. A woman was waiting for them. She stood with her arms crossed, her posture radiating impatience and disapproval. She was tall and slender, likely in her late 30s, with intelligent, weary eyes the color of the sea outside. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical, severe bun. She wore surgical scrubs under a pristine white lab coat. "You're late, Arthur," she said, her voice sharp and clear. She did not look at Jake. "Dr. Sharma, this is Jake Callahan," Arthur said, making the introduction. Dr. Sharma finally turned her gaze on Jake, and it was cold. She ran her eyes over his tactical-looking boots, his disciplined posture, and the silent K9 at his side. Her face tightened. "Callahan," she said, the name sounding like an accusation. "From Callahan Financial, I presume. Harrison's man. I was wondering when he'd send someone to inventory the assets." "Anya," Arthur began, his tone placating. "Save it, Arthur," she snapped, cutting him off. Her focus remained locked on Jake. "Let me save you some time, Mr. Callahan. This facility is not a line item. It's not a property to be liquidated. We are a functioning research and rehabilitation center. The work we do here is vital. You can tell Harrison Vance that his bean counters aren't welcome." Jake remained perfectly neutral, absorbing her hostility without reaction. He recognized her type. She was a fighter, fiercely protective of her territory. He respected it. "He is not," Arthur tried again. "He's a Callahan, isn't he? Or a Vance? It's all the same money. Money that Richard was happy to pour into this place until he got sick. And now the vultures are circling." She finally looked at Valor, her expression softening for just a fraction of a second. "At least you brought one of your own. Is he here for assessment, too?" "Ma'am," Jake said, his voice a low, calm rumble that cut through her anger. "I'm not here to inventory anything." His quiet authority seemed to surprise her, but it didn't placate her. "Then why are you here?" "To take the tour before you shut us down." "Anya, enough," Arthur said, his voice firm. "You are mistaken. Jake is not here from Harrison. He is here because of Richard. Come, both of you." Arthur led them through a set of secure glass doors. Anya followed with visible reluctance. They entered a central command hub. One entire wall was a map of the facility showing life signs, power levels, and security zones. Another wall was a window looking into a massive, state-of-the-art veterinary surgical suite. "What is this place, Arthur?" Jake asked, his mind processing the sheer scale of the operation. "Richard Callahan built this facility 12 years ago," Arthur explained, his voice echoing slightly in the sterile room. He poured hundreds of millions of dollars into it, all off the books through a private trust. He built it for one purpose and one purpose only. He gestured to the surgical suite where a tan-colored Malinois lay on a gurney, a complex prosthetic brace attached to its hind leg. The Aegis Project, Arthur said, is the most advanced rehabilitation center on Earth for special operations K9s and their handlers. It's for the dogs who are too broken to be rehomed and the operators who are too lost to find their way back. This is Richard's true legacy. Anya stared at Arthur, her anger giving way to confusion. Arthur, what are you talking about? Of course I know what we do here. I run this place. You run the operations, my dear, Arthur said gently. But you were never given access to the governance. Richard kept that separate. He was waiting. He turned to Jake. Harrison received the company, the public face, the money. Richard left this to you. Anya let out a short, skeptical laugh. He left it to him? A soldier with what? A key card? No, Arthur said. He nodded to a sleek black panel on the wall. It was seamless. No card reader, no keypad. With this. The server core. It controls the entire trust, the financials, the security protocols, everything. And Richard, in his wisdom, made it accessible by only one key. He looked at Jake. The whistle. Jake's hand went to his pocket. He pulled out the tarnished piece of brass. Anya looked at the whistle, then back at Arthur, her face a mask of disbelief. You cannot be serious. That's a dog whistle. This is a joke. Show her, Jake, Arthur said. Jake stepped up to the black panel. There was a small circular sensor in the center. He put the whistle to his lips and blew. There was no sound. Nothing a human ear could hear, but Valor's head tilted, and on the panel, a light glowed green. A soft chime echoed, and the screen lit up, displaying a single line of text, acoustic signature verified. Welcome, trustee. Anya's jaw dropped. She stared at the screen, then at Jake, then at the whistle in his hand. All the fight, all the hostility drained out of her, replaced by a stunning, profound shock. It's not just a whistle, Arthur explained, his voice filled with a quiet satisfaction. It's that whistle. The frequency it produces is one of a kind, coded directly to the system. It cannot be duplicated. He placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Richard knew no one in the family would ever see it as anything but a worthless trinket. No one but you. Jake Callahan, welcome to the Aegis Project. You are the new trustee. All of this, is your responsibility now. Anya Sharma stared at the activated server screen for a long moment, her clinical composure completely fractured. She looked at Jake, at the whistle in his hand, and back to the screen. The word trustee pulsed in a soft green light. She took a deep, steadying breath, reassembling her professional mask, but the coldness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a stunned, wary curiosity. Well, she said, her voice a full octave lower, it appears I owe you an apology, Mr. Callahan. Or, Jake. I had no idea. Richard never told me. He told no one, Arthur Sterling interjected gently. That was the entire point. Secrecy was his protection. He placed a data slate on the console. Anya, if you would be so kind as to begin Mr. Callahan's operational briefing. I have trust documents that require his signature. She nodded, her mind clearly racing. Of course, Arthur. This way, Jake. She led him from the command center, Valor padding silently beside them. The sterile hallway opened up into a breathtaking central atrium, a multi-story space carved from the living rock with a massive skylight of reinforced glass far above that showed the churning gray main sky. The air was filled with the sound of running water from a reclamation fountain and the distant, muffled sounds of life. Richard called this the core, Anya began, finding her footing in the familiar rhythm of a tour. It connects all four wings: medical, research, rehabilitation, and residence. She was all business, but her tone had changed. She was no longer speaking at him, but to him. This is the research wing. She badged them into a lab that looked like something from a science fiction film. Robotic arms, 3D printers, and vats of polymers lined the walls. Our prosthetics and orthotics lab, she explained. When a K9 suffers a catastrophic injury, we don't just retire them, we rebuild them. We're developing neural interface limbs, carbon fiber support structures, technology 20 years ahead of the civilian market. Jake watched a technician meticulously assembling a lightweight, articulated leg for a large shepherd. Incredible, he murmured, not at the tech, but at the purpose. We're funded to succeed, not to profit, Anya said, a hint of pride in her voice. She led him onward. They saw the hydrotherapy wing, a massive pool with variable currents and underwater treadmills. They saw the sim rooms, holographic environments designed to reacclimate dogs to civilian life, simulating everything from a crowded park to a quiet living room, helping to deprogram their high-strung tactical responses. With every new marvel, Jake's awe grew. This wasn't just a kennel, it was a palace. It was a fortress of healing. This is where he poured his money, Jake said, more to himself. This is where he poured his heart, Anya corrected, her voice soft. They took an elevator to the surface, emerging into the damp, misty air onto an icy clifftop training field. It was surrounded by a 10-foot-high, state-of-the-art security fence. This is the perimeter, Anya said. The fence is electrified, pressure-sensitive, and monitored by thermal, LiDAR, and visual. You have a blind spot, Jake said quietly. Anya stopped. What? Jake pointed, his gaze fixed not on the fence, but on the terrain beyond it. There, that section of cliff. The cameras are angled to cover the ground approaching the fence. But that granite outcrop creates a 4-foot-wide shadow. Anyone with decent climbing gear could rappel down, bypass the LiDAR from above, and hit that spot. And your pressure plates are set for ground approach. They wouldn't trigger from a lateral move off the rock face. You're vulnerable from above. Anya stared at the spot, her mind running the tactical geometry. She paled slightly. In 5 years, not a single one of my security specialists has ever pointed that out. They're security guards, Jake said without judgment. They think about keeping people out. I'm trained to think about getting in. A new, profound respect dawned in Anya's eyes. He wasn't just muscle. He was a scalpel. I'll have the engineers on it immediately. As they walked back toward the core, she hesitated. There's one more place. It's not on the official tour. It's the sanctuary part of our name. The isolation wing. The wing was quiet. The air was different. Heavy. It was where the hopeless cases lived. Dogs whose minds were as broken as their bodies. Anya stopped in front of a reinforced kennel. Inside, a dark-coated Belgian Malinois lay on a cot facing the wall. He was scarred, one ear torn, but still immensely powerful. He didn't move as they approached. That's Aries, Anya said, her voice hushed. His handler, he was lost in an operation 8 months ago. Aries was recovered, but, he's gone. He hasn't barked in 8 months. He refuses all contact. He'll only eat when the room is empty. He's just waiting to die. We've tried everything. Medication, animal behaviorists, even bringing in other dogs. He's dangerously aggressive if pushed. He's shut down. Jake studied the dog. He saw the tension in the powerful shoulders, the absolute stillness of a creature that had given up. May I? He asked. Be careful, she warned. He bit the last specialist who tried to put a leash on him. Jake unclipped Valor's leash. Valor, sit. Stay. Valor sat, his posture relaxed, non-threatening. Jake didn't approach the kennel door. Instead, he unlatched it and, moving slowly, entered the kennel. Anya's hand flew to her mouth. Jake, no. Jake ignored her. He didn't look at Aries, he didn't speak to him. He just walked to the far wall and sat down, his back against the concrete, his legs crossed. He sat in silence. Aries's head twitched, his one good ear swiveled. He didn't turn, but his entire body tensed. He was acknowledging the intrusion. Outside the kennel, Valor let out a low, soft woof. Not a bark, just a quiet greeting. Aries's head lifted an inch off the cot. Jake still didn't look at him. He just sat, breathing calmly. He was sharing the space, not invading it. He was projecting absolute calm, absolute control. For 5 minutes, the only sound was the building's ventilation. Then, slowly, Aries turned his head. His dark, haunted eyes fixed on Jake. A low, warning growl started deep in his chest. Jake didn't flinch. He slowly, very slowly, reached into his own pocket and pulled out the tarnished brass whistle. Anya tensed. Don't. The sound might. Jake didn't blow the high-frequency key. He put the whistle to his lips and, his fingers covering the holes, produced a single, very low, soft pitch. It was a simple 2-note call. Up, down. The growling stopped. Aries's head lifted fully. He stared at the whistle. He knew that sound. It was the universal, basic call of a handler. Come here. Jake did it again. Up, down. Aries's paws twitched. He looked from Jake to Valor, who sat patiently outside the kennel, a picture of a K9 at peace. Aries saw a handler without a dog and a dog without a handler. The broken equation in his mind began to shift. Slowly, agonizingly, Aries swung his legs off the cot. He stood. He took one step, then another. He walked across the kennel and stopped just out of arm's reach of Jake. He stared at the man, then at the whistle. Then, for the first time in 8 months, Aries made a sound, a quiet, high-pitched whine. He leaned his head forward and nudged Jake's hand with his nose. Anya's eyes filled with tears. Jake remained still, letting the dog make the contact. He then slowly lifted his hand and scratched the base of Aries's torn ear. Aries didn't flinch. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing. Jake stayed there for another 10 minutes before he quietly stood and left the kennel, latching it behind him. Aries didn't return to his cot. He stood at the door, watching them go. Anya was silent until they were back in the command center. "How?" she finally whispered. "How did you do that?" "He wasn't waiting to die," Jake said, his voice rough with emotion. "He was waiting for orders. He just needed someone to speak his language." Anya looked at him, her respect now total. "Richard was right about you." "I need to know what I'm responsible for," Jake said, turning to the main console. "All of it," Anya said, gesturing to the panel. "The server is yours, trustee." Jake again put the whistle to his lips, blowing the silent, high-frequency note. The panel chimed, "Welcome, trustee," but this time, a new icon appeared, "Play Richard Callahan's message." Jake pressed it. The main screen flickered, and the image of his grandfather appeared. Not the frail man at the end, but Richard as he was 5 years ago, still vital, his eyes sharp. He was in his study. "Jake," the image said, his voice clear. "If you are seeing this, then I am gone, and you have passed my first test. You found the key." He smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Your family, your cousins, they are good at making money, but they are terrible at valuing things. They would have sold this land for its mineral rights. They would have liquidated this place for its parts. They see everything as a resource to be consumed." Richard leaned forward, his gaze intense, as if staring directly at Jake through time. "But not you. You were always different. You never wanted the money. You wanted to serve. You wanted to protect. I built this place for those who, like you, stand on the wall. I built it for the protectors and their loyal companions. Aegis is a shield, Jake, and a shield is useless in the hands of a merchant. It belongs in the hands of a warrior. Your family got my company, but you get my legacy. Protect it. Grow it. You're not a profiteer, Jake. You are a guardian. This is what you were built for." The video ended. Jake stared at the screen, the weight of his grandfather's words settling on him. He wasn't the family outcast. He was the chosen heir. He felt a hand on his arm. "A guardian," Anya said. "Welcome to Aegis, Jake." The high of the previous day's revelation settled into a quiet, sharp-edged focus. The video from Richard had provided a mission, and a mission was something Jake understood. The next morning, he, Anya, and Valor were standing on the clifftop training field, the mist swirling around their ankles. The air was cold and heavy with the promise of more rain. "The vulnerability is real," Anya was saying, pointing to the rocky outcrop Jake had identified. She had a data slate in her hand, displaying thermal images. "I've reviewed the logs. We get signal bounce back from that rock face. It creates a thermal echo. We've been misreading it as solid coverage. You need sensors on the outcrop, not just pointed at it," Jake said. "And pressure plates calibrated for vertical weight, not horizontal." "I've already put in the work order," Anya said. She looked at him, the analytical severity in her eyes softened by a new, shared purpose. "It's good to have you here, Jake." Before he could reply, a chime sounded from the comms unit on her belt. "Dr. Sharma," a tinny voice said, "we have an unauthorized vehicle at the Gate Alpha tunnel entrance. The driver is demanding entry. He says his name is Harrison Vance." Anya and Jake exchanged a look. The peace was shattered. "He's not on any access list," she said, her voice hardening. "He's here because he thinks he owns the driveway," Jake said. "He must have followed the property line records from the will. What do? We can't just let him in." "No," Jake agreed. "We go out. Valor, with me." They descended back into the core, took the main tunnel, and stood before the massive, retractable stone door. "Open it, please, Anya, but keep the inner security door sealed. No one sees the facility." Anya nodded, keying a code into a nearby panel. With a low, grinding hum, the massive granite door slid open, revealing the gray, windswept day and a very out-of-place, gleaming black sedan. Standing beside the car, Looking furious, was Harrison Vance. He was dressed in a handmade Italian suit, his expensive shoes already speckled with mud. When he saw Jake emerge from the dark tunnel, followed by Anya and the formidable dog, his anger morphed into a look of profound confusion. "Jake?" Harrison barked, striding forward. "What is the meaning of this? What is this bunker? I am the executor of the Callahan estate. This property is under my control. Open this gate." "Hello, Harrison," Jake said, his voice flat. He, Anya, and Valor stood just outside the tunnel, a clear line drawn. "You're mistaken. The Callahan financial portfolio is under your control. This land is not part of it." Harrison laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Don't be ridiculous. I have the deeds. All of it. Grandfather left you a whistle. Now, are you going to step aside, or do I have to have you removed for trespassing?" "This facility and the land it occupies are held in a separate, private trust," Jake said, his patience clearly manufactured. "Richard Callahan appointed me the sole trustee. You are trespassing, Harrison." The color drained from Harrison's face, replaced by a dark flush of rage. He had clearly done his homework on the land, but not on its hidden ownership. A separate trust? That's impossible. It's fraud. I'll have that broken by the end of the week." "You can try," Jake said. Harrison paced, kicking at a loose piece of gravel. He was vibrating with anger. He looked past Jake, trying to peer into the darkness of the tunnel. "What is this, anyway? Some secret clubhouse? A hole in the ground for you and your dog?" "What we do here is not your concern," Anya said, stepping forward. "This is a private research facility, and we must ask you to leave." Harrison's eyes snapped to her. "And who are you? The help?" "This is Dr. Anya Sharma," Jake said, his voice dropping a degree. "She is the director of this facility, and you will show her respect." Valor, sensing the shift in Jake's tone, took one step forward, planting himself between Jake and Harrison. He didn't make a sound. He just stood, a 90-pound wall of muscle and teeth, and stared. Harrison instinctively recoiled, his gaze fixed on the dog. Fine. Keep your bunker. I don't care what's in it." He took a deep breath, visibly trying to regain his smooth, corporate composure. "Look, cousin, maybe I was hasty. Let's be reasonable." He straightened his suit jacket. "I don't know what grandfather told you, but this patch of useless rock isn't just a scenic view. My geology teams have been surveying this entire coastline for months. This specific cliff, this land, is sitting on one of the largest deposits of rare earth minerals in North America. We're talking lithium, yttrium, enough to power Callahan Financial's tech division for a century." Now it made sense. Richard hadn't just hidden the facility. He had hidden it on top of a treasure chest. "I see," Jake said. "Yes, you do," Harrison said, mistaking Jake's calm for calculation. He saw his opening. "Look, you don't care about minerals. You're a soldier. You care about, I don't know, duty. Whatever it is you do. This place, this sanctuary, it's just a drain on resources. It's a sentimental folly." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a checkbook. "I am prepared to make you a very generous offer. I will not contest the trust. I will not contest your ownership of this hole in the ground. I will buy it from you. $50 million. Cash. Right now." He scribbled the amount and tore the check out, holding it up. $50 million. You can take that, go back to the Middle East or wherever it is you play your war games. Go play soldier, Jake. Leave the business to the people who understand it." The insult, the casual, dismissive wave of his hand, was designed to belittle him, to reduce his life's work to a game. Anya looked at Jake, her breath held. $50 million. It was a staggering sum, enough to fund Aegis for decades. She saw the conflict not in Jake's face, but in the sheer weight of the offer. Jake looked at the check flapping in the wind. He looked at Harrison's smug, expectant face. Then he looked at the legacy Richard had built behind him. He met Harrison's eyes. "This legacy is not for sale." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the wind and the distant crash of the surf. Harrison's smile didn't just fade, it evaporated. His face became a mask of cold, pure fury. The civilized cousin was gone, replaced by the predator Jake had always known was underneath. He slowly, deliberately put the checkbook away. "You're making a mistake, cousin. A very, very expensive mistake. It's time for you to leave, Harrison." Harrison walked backward to his car, his eyes never leaving Jake. "You think you've won? You think that old man's trick will stop me?" He left you a dog kennel on top of my mine. He opened his car door. That land, and everything under it, will be mine. By any means necessary. He got into the sedan, revved the engine, and spun the car around on the gravel track. He sped off, leaving the scent of exhaust and damp earth behind. Anya, Jake, and Valor stood in the entryway for a long time. The massive stone door slid shut, sealing them back inside their sanctuary, but it no longer felt as safe as it had that morning. Anya turned to Jake, her face pale, but her eyes resolute. The last trace of her suspicion was gone, burned away by Harrison's open threat. It was replaced by something new, trust, and a deep, unsettling worry. He's not just a businessman, is he? She said, her voice quiet. No, Jake replied, his gaze fixed on the sealed door. He's an enemy. Harrison's threat hung in the air long after his sedan disappeared. For 2 days, Aegis operated with a new, thrumming tension. Jake and Anya worked with the engineering team to implement the new security measures on the cliff face, a frantic race against a known but unseen enemy. Then the weather reports turned dire. It's a nor'easter, Anya announced, her face pale in the light of the command center's main screen. They stood watching a swirling, monstrous vortex of red and yellow graphics spinning up the Atlantic coast. The models are calling it Hurricane Leo. It's the worst the state has seen in 30 years. This facility was built to withstand a direct hit, wasn't it? Jake asked, his voice calm. Theoretically, she said. It's rated for 150 mile/hour winds and has redundant power for 72 hours, but it's never been tested. It's about to be, Jake said. He looked at the young man at the main console who was typing furiously. Leo, what's our status? Leo Martinez, the facility's lead systems engineer, was a man in his late 20s who seemed to run on caffeine and nervous energy. He was brilliant, but his eyes were wide with anxiety. All non-essential surface activity is locked down, Dr. Sharma. All personnel are secure. The core is sealed. We're running on primary power, but the wind shear is already, well, it's significant. As if on cue, a low, guttural moan echoed through the solid rock of the facility. It wasn't the sound of wind, but of the mountain itself resisting thousands of tons of pressure. Valor, who had been lying at Jake's feet, lifted his head, his ears flat. When does it make landfall? Jake asked. Now, Leo said. The world outside the reinforced skylight in the distant atrium went from dark gray to an impenetrable, violent black. The low moan became a constant, high-pitched shriek. All systems stable, Leo reported, his voice tight. The grid is holding. The backup generators are, he trailed off. Wait. The lights in the command center flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging the room into absolute darkness. A moment later, red emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Leo, report. Anya's voice was sharp. I don't know, Leo stammered, his face a mask of panic in the red light. We lost the grid, but the primary generators should have kicked in. They didn't. The secondary backups are offline, too. This isn't possible. The storm can't, it shouldn't be able to do this. It wasn't the storm. Jake's voice cut through the panic. He was already at a manual utility panel, prying it open. This is an attack. He's using the storm as cover. As he spoke, alarms began to blare. A cacophony of contradictory warnings. Security breach. Wing containment failure. Level 2. Medical wing. Power critical. The automated doors are failing. Leo shouted. They're all unlocking. It's a full-on cyber attack, Jake said, his hands moving with practice speed inside the panel. He was no longer just a soldier. He was an operator, a systems expert trained to function in total chaos. He's not just trying to shut us down. He's trying to get in. I can't, I'm locked out, Leo yelled, hammering at his keyboard. The system, it's fighting me. It's a brute force assault on the main server. I can't regain control. Then we go manual, Jake ordered. Anya, lock down this command center. Use the physical deadbolts. Leo, forget the server. Focus on the internal network. Get me a hardline connection to the medical wing. Now. His orders, precise and certain, sliced through the fear. Anya and Leo moved, their panic replaced by purpose. While they worked, Valor began to act strangely. He moved away from Jake and went to the heavy steel door of the command center. He stood, hackles raised, and let out a low, menacing growl, not at the door, but through it, toward the surface. Valor, heel, Jake commanded. The dog ignored him. He barked once, A sharp, concussive sound. Jake, Anya said, her hand on the comms unit. He's barking toward the surface transformer, isn't he? The one on the clifftop. He senses something, Jake said, his eyes narrowing. Something that isn't the storm. I've got a hard line, Leo shouted. But it's, oh no. What? Anya rushed to his side. It's the K9 ICU. The main power is gone, and the tertiary backup, the last resort battery, it's been digitally disabled. The system is reporting 100% failure. A new, frantic voice crackled over the comms. Dr. Sharma, this is Jenna in the ICU. We're dark. The ventilators are down. We're bagging them manually, but we have 5 critical patients. We're going to lose them. The generator, it won't start. Anya grabbed the comm. Jenna, how long? Minutes. Maybe 5. The manual override, it's outside. Anya looked at Jake, her face a mask of desperation. The manual generator override is in a reinforced housing on the surface. We have to go out. Out in that? Leo whispered, staring at the shaking walls. Get us gear, Jake said to Anya. Hard hats, waterproof comms, safety lines. Leo, you keep fighting that system. Do not let him win. 2 minutes later, Jake and Anya stood at the emergency surface access hatch. Jake clipped a safety line to her harness and then to his own. When I open this, stay low and behind me, he yelled over the roar. Do not let go of the guide rail. He spun the wheel lock. The hatch flew open, ripped from his hands by the wind, and slammed against the rock wall. The sound that entered was not a shriek, but a physical thing, a solid wall of noise and water that felt like a freight train. Go, go, go. Jake yelled, pushing Anya out into the blackness. The world was chaos. The rain was horizontal, hitting them like tiny needles. The wind, easily over 100 miles per hour, tried to peel them from the rock. This way. Anya screamed, pointing. They moved foot by agonizing foot along the guide rail, the cliff face on one side, a terrifying drop into the black, churning ocean on the other. Debris, branches, and pieces of rock flew past them in the dark. The housing is just ahead. Anya shouted, her voice barely audible. They reached a low concrete bunker built into the rock. Jake grabbed the heavy steel door and had to use his entire body weight to force it open against the wind. They tumbled inside, into the relative quiet of the generator room. A single red emergency light glowed. The massive diesel generator was silent. It should have started, Anya yelled, ripping her hood off. She ran to the control panel. It's dead. The system is clean, but it won't turn over. Jake's eyes scanned the room, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. It's not the system. It's physical. He moved to the generator's main fuel line. A heavy metal safety brace, which should have been in the open position, was bolted shut, cutting off the fuel. It was held in place by 2 heavy-duty bolts. Harrison, Jake said, the name a curse. He didn't just use a drone. He had someone on the ground. They did this before the storm hit. Can you fix it? I need a wrench, a heavy one. Anya pointed to a toolkit on the wall. Jake grabbed a large, cast-iron wrench. The bolts were standard, but they were torqued down tight. He put his strength into the first bolt. It wouldn't budge. It stripped or cross-threaded, he grunted, the muscles in his back and shoulders cording. He meant for this to be permanent. Jake, we have 1 minute, maybe less, Anya's voice was thin with terror. Hold the light, he ordered. He wedged the wrench onto the bolt head, took a deep breath, and pulled. It was not about strength, it was about controlled, explosive force. The wrench slipped, gashing his knuckles against the metal housing. He ignored the pain, reset his grip, and pulled again. This time, there was a grotesque, screaming sound of tortured metal, and the bolt turned. 1 down, he breathed. He moved to the second bolt. It was just as tight. He strained, his entire body shaking with the effort. Jenna says, she says we've lost Ares, Anya whispered, tears streaming down her face. He's gone, Jake. That name. The dog he had connected with. A cold, pure rage cleared Jake's mind. He wedged the wrench one last time, let out a raw, powerful yell, and threw his entire body weight into the turn. Crack. The bolt head sheared off. The safety brace fell away. Now. He yelled. Anya slammed her hand on the ignite button. The generator sputtered, choked, and then roared to life, its deep thrum a sound more beautiful than any music. Jenna. Anya screamed into her comm. Jenna, report. A sob came over the line. We We have lights. The vents are on. Dr. Sharma, they're breathing. Oh, thank heavens. We got him. Ares, we got him back. We got him back. Jake sagged against the wall, his chest heaving, his hand bleeding freely. Anya threw her arms around his neck, a desperate, relieved hug that he returned, holding them both steady in the roaring room. They had saved them. They had saved all of them. They stood there for a moment, the sound of the generator and the storm raging outside. The immediate crisis was over. But as they looked at the sheared bolt, a new, cold reality set in. Harrison wasn't just trying to shut them down. He wasn't just trying to steal from them. He was willing to kill to get what he wanted. The dawn after the storm was unnervingly quiet. The wind had vanished, leaving behind a sky scrubbed clean and a world that felt bruised and broken. The air was cold, smelling of salt, pulverized pine, and wet ozone. In the command center, the mood was one of weary triage. Jake stood, his bandaged right hand a stark white against his dark shirt, accepting a cup of coffee from Anya. The generator he had forced to life was thrumming steadily beneath their feet, a mechanical heartbeat holding back the chaos. Leo's team worked through the night, Anya said, her voice raspy with fatigue. They've purged Harrison's malware from the main system. We're back on our own power, all wings secure. But the damage to the transformer on the cliff is extensive. It was a targeted short circuit. That's what took out the primary and secondary backups. The drone, Jake said. What drone? The one he used to drop the payload onto the transformer. The one Valor was barking at. Anya looked at him. You think even in that storm? Harrison wouldn't leave it to chance. He'd use an industrial-grade, all-weather drone, and if it crashed, the wreckage is still up there. He looked down at Valor, who was sitting at his feet, alert as ever. He knows. He smelled it. Let's go for a walk, boy. He left the command center and took the surface lift, emerging into the wrecked landscape. The training field was a sea of mud and debris. The 10-foot security fence was bent and warped in several places. But Jake's focus was on the transformer housing, the concrete bunker he and Anya had nearly died in. Valor, Jake said, unclipping the leash. Find. The command was simple. Valor didn't need any more. The shepherd bounded forward, his powerful nose to the ground, ignoring the obvious debris, branches, a piece of roofing, and heading straight for a dense thicket of salal bushes near the cliff edge, right where Jake had identified the security blind spot. Valor began to dig frantically, sending mud and torn leaves flying. After a moment, he backed out, a piece of twisted, non-natural material in his mouth. He dropped it at Jake's feet. Jake picked it up. It was a piece of carbon fiber casing, scorched and partially melted. He walked into the thicket and found the rest, the chassis of a high-end industrial quad drone. The storm had smashed it into the rocks. Good boy, Jake said, his voice grim. He spent 10 minutes carefully dismantling the wreckage in the mud. He found what he was looking for, the flight controller's internal gyroscope. It was a high-spec, military-grade component, and stamped on its metal housing was a serial number. Jake took a photo with his phone. He had his proof. Back in the core, Anya and Leo Martinez were huddled around the main server console. Leo, who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, was pointing at his screen, his usual nervous energy replaced by a kind of odd confusion. Dr. Sharma, I've never seen anything like it, Leo was saying as Jake approached. When I purged Harrison's rootkit, it revealed this. It was hidden, cloaked behind a false partition. Anya looked up as Jake entered. Jake, you need to see this. On the main screen was a single locked file directory. It was not part of the normal Aegis operating system. It was something else, something deeper. The folder icon was simple, labeled, Richard Callahan, Final Testament. It's an encrypted partition, Leo said. Completely isolated. It's not a program file. It looks like a vault, and it's locked down tight. Can you open it? Jake asked. No way, Leo said, shaking his head. This is beyond me. This is old school, hardware level encryption. It's not looking for a password. It's looking for a key. One I don't have. Anya looked at Jake. It was waiting. Jake nodded. He pulled the brass whistle from his pocket. Stand back. He put the whistle to his lips and blew the silent, high-frequency note. On the screen, the first lock icon chimed and turned green. Trustee key verified. But the vault didn't open. A second prompt appeared, Callahan bloodline verification required. Please present authenticated biometric. Leo's jaw dropped. Bloodline, it's asking for your DNA. Not DNA, Jake said, his mind flashing back to the tunnel entrance, to Arthur Sterling's hand on the scanner. Biometrics. He looked at the console. To the right of the keyboard was a small, dark glass scanner, the same one he had seen Arthur use to access the facility's master controls. Until this moment, it had been dormant. Now it glowed with a soft white light. Jake looked at Anya. She nodded, her eyes wide. He placed his bandaged hand on the scanner. Biometric not recognized. Please try again. It's the bandage, Anya said, her voice tight. Jake carefully, painfully unwrapped the field dressing, revealing the raw, gashed knuckles from his fight with the generator. He wiped the blood from his palm, pressed his uninjured thumb firmly onto the glass, and held his breath. There was a long second of silence. Then the system chimed. Biometric authenticated. Welcome, Jake Richard Callahan. Access granted. The vault opened. It was not a few files. It was a life's work. It was a meticulously organized database of everything. For the next hour, they stared in stunned silence. Richard Callahan, the brilliant, remote patriarch, had been building a case for 30 years. My goodness, Leo whispered, scrolling through the directories. It was all there. Decades of evidence, long predating Harrison's control of the company. It detailed Harrison's earliest corporate crimes as a young executive, internal memos authorizing illegal waste dumping on protected lands, falsified environmental reports, shell corporations set up to launder money, including one named Vance Minerals LLC. That's him, Jake said, his voice a low growl. He had just finished his own search on the drone serial number. The drone was purchased 2 weeks ago by that exact company. But there was more. So much more. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, taped phone conversations, sworn, notarized, and video recorded affidavits from former Callahan Financial employees who had been paid to keep silent. All detailing Harrison's corruption, his fraud, his ruthlessness. It was an ironclad, unassailable case. Anya's voice was barely a whisper. This is a weapon. It's an insurance policy, Jake said, the realization settling on him with the weight of a physical blow. My grandfather, he knew what Harrison was. He knew Harrison would come for this land, for the minerals. He finally understood. Richard hadn't just left him a sanctuary to protect. He had left him an armory to win the war. The will, the whistle, the secret trust, it was all a setup. It was a trap. And Richard had used Jake as the bait. He wasn't just testing you, Jake, Anya said, looking at him with a mixture of awe and fear. He was aiming you. Jake looked at the screen, at the lifetime of evidence his grandfather had collected. He had the proof of the cyber attack. He had the proof of the physical sabotage. And now he had the proof of a lifetime of criminality that would put Harrison away forever. The game had changed. They were no longer on the defensive. Leo, Jake said, his voice cold and hard, all the warmth gone. Lock this partition back down. Make 3 copies on isolated hard drives. Give one to Anya. Keep one in the safe. Give one to me. Yes, sir, Leo replied, his fingers flying. Anya, Jake continued, turning to her, call Arthur Sterling. Tell him the final testament is open. And tell him it's time to go hunting. The morning air in the command center was sharp with ozone from the storm and thick with the electric tension of an impending counterstrike. Jake stood at the main console, a secure satellite phone pressed to his ear, Valor sitting at his feet. Anya was beside him, her arms crossed, watching the main security feed. Leo Martinez, the tech, was diverting all non-essential power to his server network, his face a mask of concentration. Arthur, it's all here, Jake said, his voice low. The final testament is, it's more than we imagined. It's 30 years of leverage. We have the drone purchase. We have the sabotage plan. We have everything. Arthur Sterling's voice crackled back over the secure line, sounding more vigorous than he had in days. Excellent. The U.S. Attorney's Office is interested. The SEC is forming a task force. They are ready to act, Jake, but they need an overt act. Harrison is protected by layers of lawyers. The evidence of his corporate crimes is one thing, but the attack on Aegis, that is what they are waiting for. So we wait? Jake asked, his patience wearing thin. We wait for him to make the next move, Arthur said. He doesn't know you have the evidence. He's desperate. He thinks he just has to remove you. As if summoned by the lawyer's words, Leo Martinez suddenly stiffened. Dr. Sharma. Jake. We have vehicles, multiple, approaching the tunnel entrance. On the screen, 3 black SUVs, identical and menacing, rolled up the gravel track and stopped just short of the massive, sealed rock door. Harrison Vance emerged from the lead vehicle. He was not alone. A half-dozen men in black tactical gear, armed and professional, fanned out, establishing a perimeter. Another man in an expensive suit holding a briefcase joined Harrison. "He brought a private army," Anya whispered, her hand gripping the console. A sharp buzz echoed through the command center, the external intercom. Jake nodded to Leo, who patched the audio through. The face of the smug, suited man appeared on the screen. "My name is Mr. Blevins, counsel for Harrison Vance," the man said, his voice oily. "I am serving an emergency court order from the state of Maine, granting temporary executorship of this property to Mr. Vance." "On what grounds?" Anya demanded. "On the grounds," Blevins said, smiling into the camera, "that the current trustee, Mr. Jake Callahan, has been declared mentally unfit and incompetent, stemming from his strenuous military service. A judge has agreed that he poses a danger to himself in this facility. We are here to relieve him of his burden. You have 5 minutes to open this gate." The audacity of it was breathtaking. Harrison was using Jake's service, his honor, as a weapon against him. "He's not just an enemy," Jake said quietly. "He's a coward." He turned to Leo. "Patch me into the residential wing. Now." "Jake, what are you doing?" Anya asked. "Harrison thinks this is a building," Jake said. "He forgot about the people inside." He walked not to the tunnel, but to the central core. The patients of Aegis were gathered, drawn by the alarms. They were not frail. They were veterans. One man, powerfully built despite the advanced prosthetic leg gleaming below his knee, rolled his wheelchair forward. His name was David Rossetti, breaker to his friends, a former Marine EOD tech. Beside him stood Maya Kim, Echo, a former Intel analyst whose recovery from PTSD was a testament to Anya's work. "Son," Breaker said, his voice like gravel, "we're hearing comms chatter about a party at the front gate. Sounds like they didn't RSVP." Jake looked at them, not as a commander, but as a brother. "Harrison Vance is at the gate. He has a fraudulent court order claiming I'm unfit. He's brought a private security force to seize this facility. They are armed." A cold, hard silence fell over the group. Echo stepped forward. "What's the play, Jake? We're not letting him take this place. Not now. Not ever." "The play is defense," Jake said. "Nonviolent. We are defending our home. This is a legal fight, not a firefight. We deny them entry legally." "Breaker. Maya. I need to buy time. 30 minutes. Can you do it?" Breaker's face broke into a grim smile. 30 minutes, kid? We can hold this gate for a week." He turned to the other veterans. "You heard him. We're not at war, but we are on duty. Let's lock it down." What happened next was a masterclass in tactical defense. The veterans, many bearing the physical and mental scars of their service, moved with a singular purpose. Under Breaker's direction, they used forklifts and utility carts from the loading bay to create a layered barricade inside the tunnel, a few dozen yards behind the main stone door. It was a perfectly legal blockade on private property. In the command center, the 5-minute mark passed. "Mr. Callahan," Blevins's voice snapped over the intercom. "Your time is up. Open the gate." "This is a private facility, Mr. Blevins," Jake replied, his voice calm and clear over the system. "Your court order is fraudulent, and we will not be complying. You are trespassing." Harrison strode up to the camera, his face purple with rage. "You can't hide in there forever, Jake. Get them in. Breach it." "Sir," Blevins said, "that's a solid rock door. I paid for a team that can handle it. Do it." The armed men brought equipment from the SUVs, hydraulic spreaders, thermal lances. This was no longer illegal serving. It was a siege. "They're trying to breach the door," Anya said, watching the feed. "I know," Jake said. He was back at the console, the secure phone to his ear. "Arthur, they're breaching. Right now." He did it. Arthur's voice was electric. "The overt act. The U.S. attorney is deploying. It's done, Jake. Send it. Send it all." Jake looked at Anya. She nodded, her hand finding his. He hit the execute key. On the main screen, a progress bar appeared, uploading final testament to secure federal servers. The files, decades of corruption, the drone purchase, the sabotage plan, streamed out of Aegis and into the hands of the government. Outside, the tactical team was noise and fury. The thermal lance cut a screaming, white-hot line in the granite. The hydraulic spreader groaned as it tried to find purchase. "They're through the first lock," Leo yelled. The massive stone door shuddered, a hideous grinding sound echoing through the facility. A small gap, no more than an inch, appeared. Harrison laughed, a wild, triumphant sound. "It's over, Jake. You've lost." And then a new sound entered the world. Not a siren, not a storm. It was the percussive whump-whump of heavy helicopters. It wasn't one, it was three. They came in low and fast over the ocean, black, unmarked, and undeniably federal. They settled on the clifftop, their rotors washing the black SUVs in a furious downdraft. Simultaneously, the main tunnel entrance was flooded with the blue and red lights of ground vehicles arriving by some unseen access road. Harrison's tactical team froze, dropping their tools. They were surrounded. Dozens of agents in FBI and SEC tactical gear swarmed the cliff. A senior agent, his flak jacket emblazoned with FBI, walked calmly through the chaos right up to Harrison Vance. "Harrison Vance?" the agent said, his voice flat. "What is this?" Harrison sputtered. "I have a court order." "And I have a federal warrant," the agent replied, holding it up, "for your arrest. For conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, wire fraud, multiple violations of the RICO Act, and about 20 other things." He nodded to his team. "Cuff him and his team. All of them." Harrison's face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. His gaze snapped to the tunnel, which was now sliding open. Jake stood in the entryway, flanked by Valor. He wasn't smiling. He just watched as the agents led Harrison away in handcuffs, his expensive suit now filthy, his eyes locked with Jake's. It was not the look of a defeated rival. It was the look of pure, primal hatred. An agent approached Jake. "Mr. Callahan, thank you for your cooperation. The site is secure." Anya let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since the storm. Her hand, which had been gripping Jake's arm, slid down to find his. They had won. The hunt was over. The silence that followed the departure of the federal vehicles was more profound than the eye of the storm. The FBI, the SEC, the local police, they had all come and gone, leaving a strange, hollow quiet in their wake. Harrison was gone. His hired team was in custody. The immediate threat, which had loomed like a hurricane, had simply evaporated. Inside the command center, Leo Martinez was slumped over his keyboard, fast asleep. The veterans, Breaker and Echo among them, had quietly dispersed, the adrenaline rush leaving them exhausted but victorious. They had defended their home. Now only Jake and Anya remained, standing in the vast, quiet core. The skylight far above showed the first clean, bright blue sky in days. "So," Anya said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "That happened." Jake nodded, a slow, tired movement. He looked at his bandaged hand, then at the sealed server vault. "It's over." "Is it?" she asked, her intelligent eyes searching his. "He's gone. But what happens now?" It was the question that hung over the entire facility. The battle was won, but the future of Aegis, its funding now severed from the corrupt Callahan Financial, was a blank page. The answer came 2 days later, not in the form of a lawyer, but a helicopter. This one was military gray, a Marine Osprey that landed with disciplined precision on the newly cleared training field. A tall, imposing man in a service dress uniform stepped out, his cap squared perfectly. He had the weathered face of a man who had spent a lifetime in command and the sharp, assessing eyes of a leader. On his shoulder boards, he wore the stars of a general. Anya met him at the hatch with Jake and Valor standing respectfully beside her. "Dr. Sharma," the general said, his voice a low baritone. "I'm General Marcus Thorne. I was a friend of Richard Callahan's. May I see what he built?" General Thorne was a man of few words, a quiet but intense observer. Anya and Jake gave him the full tour. He saw the prosthetics lab, his eyes lingering on a new brace being designed for a shepherd who had lost a leg in service. He saw the hydrotherapy pools where Breaker was doing his own physical therapy alongside a K9. He saw the sim rooms. Finally, Anya brought him to the isolation wing. Ares, the Malinois, was in the open yard playing a gentle game of fetch with Valor, his entire demeanor transformed. "That dog," General Thorne said, pointing. His file said he was a total loss. His handler, he was a good man. We thought the dog was lost with him. He just needed a new mission, Jake said quietly, stepping forward. The general turned his full attention to Jake. He assessed him from head to toe, seeing not just the civilian, but the operator beneath. "Jake Callahan. Richard's grandson. You're the trustee." "Yes, sir." Richard always said he had one family member with grit in his veins. The rest were accountants. A rare, thin smile touched the general's lips. This story is making waves, son. A secret, black budget facility for K9s built by a billionaire. The media is having a field day, and Callahan Financial is collapsing. Harrison's corruption ran deeper than anyone knew. The final testament you released, it toppled the entire board. This place was never about Callahan Financial, General, Anya said. It was only ever about the mission. But now, with the company in receivership, our funding is. Your funding is the reason I am here, Thorne interrupted. The Marines and SOCOM, we have a problem. We produce the finest warriors in the world, both two-legged and four. And when they get broken, we don't always know how to fix them. We patch them up. We give them medals. And we send them home. Richard Callahan, it seems, solved our problem for us. He looked around at the clean air, the advanced technology, the sheer, profound peace of the sanctuary. This facility, the general declared, is a national asset. As of 0900 this morning, the Aegis project is entering into a formal partnership with the United States Department of Defense. We will be the official primary rehabilitation and research center for all Special Operations K9 units. Your funding is secure, Dr. Sharma. Your mission is not only safe, it is about to expand. Anya's hand went to her mouth, her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. This was everything she had worked for. Later, after the general had departed, Jake found himself in his small residence, packing his duffel bag. His leave was over in 48 hours. His team was waiting. His old life, the one of salt, steel, and shadow, was calling him back. He zipped the bag and stopped. Valor, who had been watching him, let out a low, questioning whine. "It's time to go, buddy," Jake murmured. But the words felt hollow. He walked out of the room and found Anya in the command center, reviewing the new proposals from the DoD. "They want to double our capacity," she said, looking up, a weary but brilliant smile on her face. "They're asking for specs on the sim rooms." We did it, Jake." "You did it, Anya. You and Richard." "We couldn't have held it," she said, her smile fading. "Not without you." She saw the duffel bag he had left by the door. "You're leaving?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement of loss. "My leave is up," he said. He felt torn. A man standing between two worlds, both of which he had fought for. "I see," she said, turning back to the screen, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Well, thank you, Jake. For everything. Aegis, we will be in your debt." "Anya." He stepped closer. "I'm not going back." She turned, her eyes searching his. "What?" "I'm packing," he said, "because I'm moving out of the guest quarters. The trustee should probably have a permanent residence." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "It's my official transfer request from active duty operator to permanent advisory liaison for this facility. My team, my old team, they're hunters. That's what we do." He looked around the Corps at the place of healing. "But this is a different mission. My grandfather called me a guardian. I think it's time I learned what that means." Anya didn't smile. Her expression was one of profound, dawning relief. She just nodded, unable to speak. That evening, the sun, which had been absent for so long, finally broke through the coastal clouds. It set the Atlantic on fire, streaks of orange, purple, and gold painting the water. Jake, Anya, and Valor stood on the clifftop near the patch of ground where the drone had crashed. The wind was gentle, the air clean. The silence was no longer hollow. It was full. It was the sound of peace. Valor lay at their feet, his head on his paws, completely relaxed. His duty done. They watched the sun dip below the horizon. Anya shivered slightly in the cooling air. Jake didn't look at her. He just unzipped his jacket, moved to stand a little closer, and slowly, his scarred knuckles brushing the back of her hand, he took her hand in his. It was not a gesture of passion, but of partnership. It was a silent, solid promise, a soldier's and a doctor's, a protector's and a healer's. Anya's fingers interlaced with his, holding on tight. Jake looked down at his other hand. In his palm, he held the small brass whistle. It was no longer the symbol of his family's mockery. It wasn't just a key to a door or a vault or even a weapon to win a war. He looked at Anya's profile, silhouetted against the dying light. He looked at the massive, hidden sanctuary beneath their feet, a place built for heroes by a man who had seen the hero in him. He closed his hand around the whistle. It was his inheritance. It was his anchor. It was the legacy of the Guardian. And he was finally home.